like my first interest was to go search how to do hacking.
In 2005, you interned at IBM.
What I did was, I knew there were students in my engineering school that were also interested. Then everyone got internship and shit and then said, oh, how about you? I would come often every year on vacation. I would do some jobs. Probably made like something like R1 million and francs within those 2 months. And I felt like I don't want to go back to school. There is something to do here. Actually, we debated that with my parents. After my internship, I was back here to set up Axis, which was my first company, discussing with people internally, getting their support.
So what was Axis doing?
Go to businesses.
Yeah. What did you want to build?
Well, initially it was like a kind of IBM.
So when did you exit?
2014 with Irembo. So the 4 of us with the facilitator. We went, debated for 3 days on what projects could be added in the Nikki plan. And one we came with was a platform that would enable any government institution to put their services online easily. The product was called Dirembo. Now also the organization has been renamed Dirembo. But yeah, it started called Rwanda Online, and I went to set it up and lead it.
The why Rwanda Equip was set up. But what exactly you guys are working on?
Public education in Rwanda has been evolving fast and in the good direction in terms of having all kids going to school.
What have you seen separate successful entrepreneurs to those who are not successful?
By the way, I don't know what we call a successful entrepreneur.
All right. Clement, welcome to the podcast.
Very happy to be here.
Yeah, I'm super excited about this conversation. I remember the last time that we had a one-on-one. I think we've had a couple of one-on-ones probably. I think we grabbed some coffee a couple of years ago, and I think we had another one here in Kigali. And I'm very excited because you're someone that I really respect. Your background, your experience, the things that you've been able to do are really speak for themselves. And I can't wait to dive deep into all of that stuff. So let's kick off with understanding the context of Clement, right? Let's take me a couple of years back. When you're still young, what are you looking forward to become? What is on your mind? What are you seeing around you? What is shaping you?
How far young? A young 10 years, a young 14 years, or a young 16 years?
Let's look at, maybe you will know better. So when was something interesting that happened, let's say, that you would say when you look back now, many years ago, many years later, you're like, maybe that thing, I had to go through that for me to become the person I am. Could be the type of school, could be the city that you were living in.
Yeah.
Yes.
I'm a computer scientist. That's my background. And I'd say my love for computers was born in 1994, like right after the genocide. When we went around in houses collecting whatever we find for our homes. I had this uncle, I was 14. I had this uncle who loved computers or knew a bit about computers. So he took as many computers he would come across in any house as possible. So because I wasn't going to school, I was spending time setting them up, installing them, reinstalling them, trying things around them, installing a game. I remember it was these discs. So I really encountered or started working with computers at that young age. So I'd say the event, as you ask, I mean, it's unfortunately the genocide, I would say, led to that, that aftermath and the lack of anything to do and me playing with computers. And that's when I started to love computers, but also be good with computers. At 14 already, I think it's rare in Rwanda because at that time it was even rare. It was probably the first time I saw a computer. I had seen one maybe 2 years before, like in 92, when my mom brought me to our office. She worked with the Peace Corps. So they had one Mac that they all used. Was it called Mac then? Macintosh, yeah.
Yeah.
So that's the first time I saw it, and the only time. Then after that was my uncle, who was, like collecting laptops and desktops wherever he found them, and me, starting to install them and playing around with them. So that was the start of my love for computers. That continued afterwards.
Very interesting. And you said that you were not studying then. Did you end up going back to school?
Yes, very quickly. Like the first school that opened was a school called Apacop. I don't know if you know where Apacop is. Yes. So that's where I went. I think it opened 94 October. I think it opened maybe beginning of 95. So yeah, that's where I went, started going to school. Then Lycée de Kigali opened. Then I went to Lycée de Kigali because I was there before. So I went back to school.
Yeah, very interesting. And then tell me about that. You say that you were installing computers. I like to also, when I speak to technologists, I like to understand what part of technology they're most excited about, right? There are people who are excited about, let's say, the Steve Wozniaks of, I'm trying to build my own computer. I'm trying to build something out of it. And other people are more interested in, let's say, the software side of things, where it's like, okay, I believe that software can digitize a specific task. For you, how did that evolve? Was it more in terms of you were interested in the hardware side of things or interested in the software side of things?
The software side of things. Actually, very quickly, the software side of things. So the way all those computers, one of the things I really developed a skill on when I was still 14 was none of those computers had a menu. Like you would switch it on and it had this command prompt, like C.
Yeah.
So you would write some basic code to create a menu. And then you just, maybe you create a command where someone just writes menu, enter. Then it gives them option like USSD now. Yeah. Then they choose one. So one would be to open the word processor, or two would be to open the Excel spreadsheet. So I would create menu. I could even develop some kind of a password. So before you even go further, you need to enter a password. My uncle would create those and I would try to hack them. So that's the software kind of part. So when the internet first came to Rwanda, there was this fast internet cafe. It was across. So I ended up, after Lycée de Kigali, I finished my secondary school at École Belge. So the internet cafe was across the building just opposite now Norsken. But
very rich story. That hub there. Yeah.
So there was the first internet cafe in town. When it came, like my first interest was to go search how to do hacking. And the first thing I found like is if you want to do hacking, you need to learn a programming language, and they were talking about Python then. Then I started learning Python, but then the owner, I think it was Albert. I don't know if you know Albert on like Contact FM.
Yes.
Yeah, so Albert was the one running that internet cafe. He would always come to me and say, Clement, if you put viruses in those computers, you're going to repair them. But I went there so often, but I ended up getting it for free because I would still repair some of the computers that time, then learn hacking and so. So it has always been the software part of it, the programming part of it. Yeah.
Yeah. So after École Belge, what did you do? Did you want to go straight to university, or did you want to continue being a hacker?
I wanted to go straight to university. I mean, wanted. Like when I think back, I had to read. Yeah. So I had to. I wasn't bad in school, so I went to university to France and went into the faculty for mathematics, information technology, and science.
Yeah, very interesting. And then in 2005, you interned at IBM.
Yes.
Yes. Tell me a little bit about that. How did that come about? IBM, big organization back then, even till now. But back then it was really booming.
It was, yeah. And then the center, so I did my studies in Montpellier.
Yeah.
I did an engineering school. Generally, that school, it's easy to get a job right up. I mean, actually, companies such as IBM and Deloitte and similar companies come directly to recruit from the school towards the last school year. So in Montpellier, the IBM center there was a center for benchmarking and prototyping. Basically, if they would have clients who come who have things like banks have a problem, then they would kind of simulate a solution within that. So it was not R&D, but more a center for sales, but where they actually build things. Within that IBM center, you also had companies like Oracle there. You had other companies who, on top of IBM machine, would also install their databases and things like that. So it was an interesting place.
Yeah.
I was very lucky to have an internship there. How did it happen is, when you're a foreign student, it's harder to get an internship because at the last year, the internship, they expect it to turn into a full-time job. When you are a foreigner, it's harder to turn it into a full-time job, so it almost feels like a waste for them. But I wanted to go to IBM, and when people ask me things I did, I'm really proud of. So what that was part of. What I did was, I knew there were students in my engineering school that were also interested. So I reached out to the HR person there. I said, I know you will come to recruit here. How about I organize it for you, and I will set up an interview. I will basically do everything that you need to. So we stayed in touch, Clement, we plan to come on this day. Do you have a list of students who will be interested? Yes, this is the list. They will be ready. This is the room that you will use. This, basically. Then everyone got internship, and she turned and said, "Oh, how about you?" So I said, "Oh, I don't even think I went through the same interviews." She said, let's go together to come to IBM. Then we will walk through some of the departments, and we see
and then you were like, my plan worked.
Yeah. So I mean, there was no way not to get an internship after doing that. So it was really easy. I mean, it's like I didn't go through that, but it was like I was already part of it. But
part of the whole process. That's very interesting. So how did you feel, right? Being a young Rwandan, first of all, living in France at this point, and now working at one of the top, let's say, how would you call them, computer technology business in the world. How did you feel? Did you ever take a deep breath and be like, okay, I really come from a long place?
I mean, I don't think I felt it in that way. I mean, it was more like, well, I'm happy. I am part of those who have an internship that's nice, right?
Yeah.
I'm not part of. So you had the top tier companies like IBM, Deloitte. Then you had the mid companies. Those are smaller companies in Montpellier, or but it's still an internship. That's what people need. They wouldn't pay as good, but that internship paid 1,000 euro a month. That was really good because my usual monthly budget was probably about 400 euros to pay rent and eat. So it goes from 400 to 1,000 for 6 months. It was really enjoyable. There's the first tier, those ones, second tier. Then the last tier was to do the internship in a research lab within the university. Basically, that is, you didn't get any internship. That's interesting. So I was happy to be in the top tier, in the part of the internship that most students would also love to be part of. But very quickly, it was a lot of work. I had to program something that manages all the events that happen at that center. As I said, it's a demonstration, benchmarking, and also many visitors. So I worked on a tool, on a software to manage that for internal use. It was a good project. It worked well. It was successful because it ended up being used. But otherwise, it was work. It was just work.
Do you know if it's still being used?
I don't think. It was built on a set of application called Lotus and Dominoes. It's very old. Like Lotus was like a sort of like the same as Microsoft's Office, right? But developed by IBM. I don't think they still use something. For sure. Yeah.
And after that, what happened after that internship experience?
So before the internship, again talking back about childhood, and so I'm always mention I'm privileged to have been brought up in a family that could afford some of the things I was able to do, like going to study abroad, coming back on vacation. So I would come often every year on vacation during the July, August period. And when I would come, I would do some jobs. So I worked for technologist to develop a software for them to manage clients and a number of things. I worked with a company that was producing matches called, I will remember, but it was based in Butare. I helped build a software for them as well. So when I came, I was in my 4th year. I did 3 jobs and probably made like something like R1 million within those 2 months, which was a lot in 2004. And I felt like I don't want to go back to school. There is something to do here. Actually, we debated that with my parents. I said, it's the last year. They always allow you can take a whole year, do something, and then go finish the last year. I can't go finish it later. Look, I'm making money. But it was a no-go, and I went back. But when I went at IBM, I had no intention to stay there after the internship. I wanted to come back because of that thing I left with. But also when I was working there, because I was working with the team that builds internal software for IBM, one of the big team was the team that configures SAP. SAP is this business management suite. The team that configures it and basically customize it to IBM's needs. And this team member, when I was telling them what I want to do in Rwanda, I said, the things you build seem to be like either stock management or client management. These are features that you would have in something like SAP. But did you know that they are open source kind of? So you could learn one open source and then you just customize it for people instead of all the time developing it from zero. Then which one? And then they showed me one. It wasn't a great one. I never ended up using them, but by searching then other possible open source, I found one called Dolibar. And it was like, I have my thing. It was based on PHP, easy to build, to develop upon, build on top of, modify, and so. So after my internship, I was back here to set up Axis, which was my first company. Actually, our communication guy at IBM is the one who designed my first logo at Axis. I asked him, I said, the company will be called Axis. Can you design the logo? So he did. So like that, discussing with people internally, getting their support. By the time I left, I had a business plan and a core product, so an open source product that I could go and customize for any type of business.
Yeah.
So yeah.
That's very interesting. I mean, not a lot of people would think about coming back on the continent, not just in Rwanda, but also other diasporans. We think about coming back to the continent because there's so much opportunity, right?
Yes.
You're working at IBM, very exciting. It's all over the news. There's great opportunities to become a world-class developer and work on bigger projects. But then you felt, that 1 million Rwandan francs that you made, you were like, there's an opportunity
like
here.
that every single week. That's how I envisioned it.
Yeah. Did you also look at, because maybe there was not a big competition back here, and there was amazing developers?
Yeah, there were some 2 or 3 companies, but also,
Yeah, there was a great opportunity to be able to tap into. So what was Access doing? What was the business plan all about?
Go to businesses, charge them, I don't know why, $1,200,000, but $1,200,000 to build something for them. Like, I don't know why that price, but because I knew I could do something in 2 weeks. I think I wasn't a bad coder, like in terms of even, I hope I could still code now, but in comparison to some of my best peers at school, we were learning all computer science. I was probably among the top when it came to coding, not school generally, but at least coding, I was good. And then probably my background already coding QBasic at 14, teaching it myself. So when I would say, okay, I have already this core product. If someone asks me something special, it's not something that's going to take more than 2 weeks. So if I charge $1,200,000 and I have 2 clients a month, then like in no time I will hire people, and then we all will make $1,200,000, and then, right?
Yeah.
So that was the idea. So the first client I got was a travel agency. Then I customized the whole thing to travel agency. It was harder to do it. It didn't take 2 weeks, it took a month and so. But it was so specific to their needs, like basically managing people they let tickets to who will pay later, get the reminders and so. It took more time, but it was so specific that I was able to then go to other travel agency and propose it to them. So then the second was a printing business, and then I did that with other printing businesses. So that's how Access started. But yeah, the idea was we get to understand the client's need. We do not build from scratch. We just customize, we rebuild, we try to steer them towards something that's standard based on the core open source software we had. Then we code a little bit and we deliver as fast as we can. And we spend more time accompanying them to use it rather than coding actually. So that was the whole basic plan.
Yeah. Did you have a team? Like, did you know where to find the first developers?
So when I started, I was still home. Actually, internet was still an issue at that time. So I used to go to KBC. There was this nightclub, Planet.
Yes.
They had really good internet because they downloaded movies. So they had a small cinema. So I would go there in the morning, download all the documents I need to read or the software updates I need to download, and then go back home and work from there. So after like the first and second client, then I went to Teledis Nyagahene. I had worked for him, and he had always told me, I remained in touch. He had always tell me, if you do business, tell me, I'll invest. So I went to see him, and this investment was office space for 6 months in the Teledis building. That's where our first office was. I think it was a car, a small car,
very practical investments.
Office, a car, and can't remember if there was no money yet. That was pretty much what I needed. I presented this to him. They ended up extending the rent by another 6 months as part of his investment. So that's then after that I also hired 2 people from University of Mudende. They had a computer science department, and so we were 3 after 6 months.
Yeah. What would you say you learned from that experience, building your first business, coming back, to Rwanda and trying to negotiate and speak to all these clients, being one of the first to offer, let's say, technology, software development services? Yeah. What would you say was the biggest learning now that you look back at it of that experience?
In general, for business or for me?
For yourself.
One, it was the first exposure to managing people, like having employees. One, you believe because you can do something this way, other people also will do it this way. So what I envisioned now was when I'm on a 2-week project of 1.2 million. This person will also be doing the same. This person will also be doing the same. We will all finish at the same time and move on. So that's going to be 3.6 million. Then like after 6 months, I was already starting to delay on salaries because the projects, instead of taking 1 month, they started taking 3 months, and I had to be looking into it, ending up doing it. Like people management and understanding. So I had to scale back. They moved on. I was alone. Then I started recruiting differently. Now, instead of recruiting, I was paying well, 450,000 per month that time, like in 2005. So instead of starting from there, I said, you know what, I'm not going to find the best coder just because they finished this school. I'm going to find them because they are hackers. They are people who, so let me find rather interns, recruit many of them, but like 5 of them, they pass 6 months here, probably 2 will be good. And then I bump a little bit their salary and then we continue. Then that's how I started now slowly growing the team. We got up to maybe 15 or 20 at the Axis, but all had grown through that, like step by step, like get them when they are not yet finished with school, but because they show some level of love for the coding and so, and yeah.
That's that kind of business. We still see a lot of other businesses offering the same services. Do you think it could still work, right? So basically building a business where you're trying to help companies, small businesses, digitize with, what is it, 15, 17 years now later? Do you still think that business is needed?
It's still needed.
Yeah.
And probably there are people who are living out of that type of business still. Like they still are living out of building small applications for small companies that are specific to their needs. Thing is, like when you have the appetite to do something that becomes big, these things don't become big easily because it's consulting. Like it really relies on the skill of people, and it doesn't scale fast. It's not like when you build Momo and it's easy to use for everyone, and then when one is using it, the other catches up, and then it creates this like, no. It's like clients take time to convince because you're convincing them you are going to change the way they manage their business. When you sign them, they're hard to use, to start using the software because it takes time to change the way you do things to add another way of doing things. Then after that, it doesn't pay much, but for one individual, it can. Like, perhaps I could have been managing 3 concurrent projects and earning like 2.4 million a month. Would I have lived out of that comfortably personally? Yes. Was I aspiring to that? Probably not. I wanted to build something.
Yeah. What did you want to build?
Well, initially it was like a kind of IBM, right? Like a place where, you have teams within teams. Like these teams are specialized in travel agency digitization, and they go and do that. But they do that so often that, the cash flow, the revenue grows up. So you build multiple teams that do all those things. I mean, we ended up continuing to grow, but yes, still doing SME things, but more when we started also to do government tenders and building software for government agencies. That was a bit more sizable in revenue, and we had more time to do the work. But generally, yes, you can do this. But if you want to really the problem there is that ability to build those big, large, self-sufficient teams. I think it wasn't the timing. Now I think you can with all the CMUs out there, the ALU out there, you can get good talent, like people who project manage well, people who do user experience design well, people who write code well. with the Andelas that also continue to bring in more software engineering talent. But at that time, it was hard to build such teams in a large scaled way.
Yeah. And so what did you end up doing? Because you had this hunger of doing something.
So we started building things where we would generate revenue like on a regular basis. Like we started working on a bus ticketing solution. So that like bus companies pay us on a monthly basis to use the solution. We built a point of sale that was certified by RRA, that was working on some kind of a tablet, so it was less costly, but it didn't get down to the cost that we wanted. So we wanted the whole package to be 200 to purchase. Then you pay like 10,000 on a monthly basis, and we manage even like payments channels within. And so we started investing a lot in those things that could be products that people pay, software as a service type of models. I think the bus ticketing somehow worked because even though we were progressing, we had this like Musa and Diogene that also were making progress. I met them. We had built a better solution because we had come across better devices and we built a better solution. They had clients, but they were struggling with the devices they had from, if I remember, China. So we came together. We invested our solution in them and more money, and we acquired share in their company, Ken's. So that actually went on and grew. I ended up selling my shares back to Musa, but that was somehow a success. The POS never worked because we were not able to bring the whole package down to $200. We wanted to sell it to clients at cost. We are not losing, but we are not putting any margin, because if they use it, then we would continue selling other things like integrating payments and so, but that never materialized really.
Yeah, very interesting. Software as a service back then, very interesting business model.
That was starting to be closer to 2010, 11. So
things were looking better.
and the idea of software as a service was more. Actually, when I joined IBM, this idea was already there. IBM was calling it business on demand. Like basically you get even cloud. So basically it's cloud. Now we call it cloud. But IBM was already calling it business on demand. Yeah. Like, you are a bank on New Year's Eve, you have more transaction. We expand your infrastructure for that day only. So that was the whole idea. But that idea died out and they ended up not being the leaders of cloud.
of that movement.
Yeah.
We're gonna get into those dinosaurs of the tech world. But in 2010, so you're still running Access, working on some of these projects. Was there a hunger in you to say, okay, I want to build my own product? I want to, let's say, move away from, let's say, understanding a case study and working with a client to solve their problem, but maybe I want to think about my own product, and that can be my own startup. Were you thinking about that at all?
When you say my own startup, because Access was my own startup.
Yes. So when I say startup, I mean more of a product-led startup. Yeah.
So as I was saying, we started doing that internally, but while still managing clients.
Yeah.
And the idea was that we built basically this product like bus ticketing, and it's a product, or a POS, it's a product, and we envisioned it to be in all the small shop, like the shop you have nearby your house, they would be using this POS. But again, didn't materialize. But that hunger had always been there.
Right.
But also the more we wanted to raise funding, because this thing required, even the tablets, would we have raised the type of funding people are able to raise now? We would have gone to China, get someone to build like the tablet we want with our specification at cost that we want, right? But it wasn't easy to raise funding. Even though I had really interesting conversation, the weight of Axis, the initial custom software development, consulting, which had more employees, was always a way. Companies would say, yeah, but yes, you are making money, but most of the money comes from this, and this is unpredictable. It's not a product. It's you. It's your brain. It's your consulting. So the idea was, okay, how about then, as you say, like maybe we push Axis out or those activities out.
Yeah.
We had already pushed some activities out. Like we used to, at some point, we bought a company that did office cabling and network installation. And we were doing that. But then everyone was able to do that at some point, and then we stopped doing that. We were doing maintenance. People would pay us $300,000 a month for us to be on a call when they have a computer issue or so. We have put that out. So we were thinking about like also that part of consulting and building custom software to put it out and start building things that we use, then we get payments on a regular basis.
Yeah. So when did you exit?
2014 with Irembo. So when Irembo came about, we had at Axis started to do a lot of government projects, including one that we called it tracking for the Prime Minister's office, that helped like basically track different programs going on in the country and what impact they're having. Then I got invited to be part of designing the NICIT Plan 3. So as the private sector, we thought input. So one of the things I proposed and we proposed was a platform. We were in a group of 3-4 people. It was me, Clarisse, Hehe, was Patrick Kawejema. He was Rock Global. I don't know if you know. Now they're Axiom.
Yes.
Then we had Andrew Nyamvumba. He was leading a company called Digitech that later on was renamed Ngali. So we were the 4 of us with the facilitator. And we went, debated for 3 days on what projects could be added in the NICI plan.
Yeah.
And one of we came with was a platform that had what we call common services that would enable any government institution to put their services online easily. So a platform would be able to manage like messaging or interaction, like sending SMSs and so. It would manage authentication of citizen, so that not every government institution that wants to authentify citizen builds their own authentication. It would include a payment system so that every agency that needs payments so to deliver a service doesn't need to build one. And the last part would be a hosting kind of infrastructure so that they don't need to think about hosting when they want to put a service online. So this would be a platform that would then allow any government agency to put their services online. So that's how the idea was born. Ngali went and started to promote this as a public-private partnership with government. I would still somehow be involved in providing ideas, looking at the proposals and things like that. And when government approved the project as a public-private partnership, at Ngali, they called me to go and then set up the organization, initially called Rwanda Online. Now, the product was called Dirembo. Now, also the organization has been renamed Dirembo. But yeah, it started called Rwanda Online. Then I went to set it up and lead it.
Yeah.
Axis still existed. I gave 60% of the shares to the employees so that they continue running it, but as their own.
Is it still operational?
That's not.
Yeah, but that's good. So let's talk a little bit about the Irembo project, right? Because I think it's quite revolutionary, right? On the continent, but also in Rwanda, in terms of digitizing that entire process. And then maybe I think the angle I want to take it is I want to take the angle of the entrepreneur, the entrepreneur who's running that, right? And I think I watched one of your TED Talks where you're talking about digital transformation and the best way to go about that.
Yeah.
And I think you did talk a little bit about this. So I think we can talk a little bit about that in terms of if, as an entrepreneur, you're coming from the private sector, you're working on this public project. Yeah. We're also going to try to understand, would a product like that survive if it was just a for-profit private company, trying to digitize the entire government services and selling that, government being a client per se. So take me through, what was the product development process of that product, right? What was the customer journey? What were you, did you guys look at user research, user persona, and how did you go about really crafting that experience?
Well, that was an interesting question in that, but maybe we can come back to it later, yes. Which is, would such a program or a company exist if not, government owned?
Yes.
And be entitled to digitizing the whole government?
Yes.
That's a good question. Let's come back to that. But then how we approach building Irembo. Of course, it's in hindsight, it always feels like it was a plan or something, but it's through learning and so. When we started Irembo, we had we had a technology partner because we were going to build infrastructure that needs to be extremely reliable, and so we know at that time still, even though we had some talent, it wasn't that straightforward to be confident that we can build something of that size. So we had a partner from Singapore that had done that in Singapore, a company called Crimson Logic. So the setup for Irembo was, we as Irembo or Rwanda Online team are mostly project managing, right? So liaising with government, getting requirements, then based on the requirements, so requirements is like a service like birth certificate. How does it work? Okay, the person goes, fills in a form that requires this information, then they check in these books, then they verify the person, and then they write on a paper, they stamp, and this paper needs to have this information, and that's a birth certificate. We also look at what the law says about it and so, and we write some kind of a specification for the birth certificate service, right? And the Crimson Logic team would build this service. Now we had it phased out, like we had 10 services that we just launched very quickly in a year. Then after that, we launch another batch of 40, then another batch of 40 every 6 months. So that was the way the project, if I summarize, was structured at the beginning. So when we started doing it, it didn't necessarily go that same way. It's like when we were digitizing, like it started for some services, depending on the interlocutor, the government agency that operates them, it would go faster. And for others, it would stagnate and go slow. So we ended up after 1 year launching. So doing that and actually respecting the timeline was a good success. But we knew that the services we were going to launch in the first phase, they were like 8 instead of being the full 10. We knew they weren't built perfectly. So one thing we also done quickly was to launch at the same time a call center and a network of agents. And we started rather marketing the call center and the network of agents more than the online portal itself. The intent here was that we wanted to get that to start understanding what actually people are going through. Like when you get to a sector office to get a birth certificate, what happens? So on many sectors, we had an agent there. So that would give us an idea of like what people want, what they come with, what they don't come with, like how does that work? But also with the call center that's free to call, we were able to also ask questions, etc. So we started to go through iterations of restructuring the team and the way we approached it. One, we said, you know what? Let's really look at how we launch services. If we are launching a birth certificate today and a marriage certificate, yet the same person that provides these two documents also does that certificate and all the other certificates. It doesn't make sense for them to go on a digital platform for these two and nothing. Yeah. So then, okay, let's go back and prioritize it, like making all these certificates and making them available so that this government agent that provides the services shifts from analog on all the things they do to digital on all the things they do. That was one. Like two, we started to learning more about how to structure our teams. Instead of project managing a service by service, so let's create teams that are multidisciplinary, that includes project manager, user, researcher, a developer, a technologist, something like that. But this team is in charge of all services that are related to this government business. Is it civil status? This team is in charge of that. Is it anything to do with transportation, like driving licenses, car permits, and all those things? Then we have a team for that. Is it to do with health? We have a team for that. So then that's how we started restructuring. When we did that, like whatever service was available, we would launch it. We wouldn't wait for our launch calendar. And then the team would probably push somewhere because they see that the clients are more reactive and they would go faster. Where it's not going fast, they would escalate, we would work on it. But then the dynamic started to go really well when we specialized team around their business because they owned it. They went out there, understood what the service requires, how to digitize it. And then also working with a company that provides you development services like Crimson Logic, some of the challenge might be, you are constantly asking us to change things, but that's costly. So we agreed on ways to collaborate and be innovative, even though the structure of the contract didn't say that. So we really looked at also those approach, and now it has even evolved to Irebo building its own development team and now doing it so it's no longer limited on changing a thing if that's needed. So yeah, that's plus or minus how it evolved.
No, I think there's a lot of lessons to be learned in there. And I think now let's take that as a case study. Now let's look at broadly building products in general, right? I know you're a big technologist. You've worked a lot as a CTO for many products. I think one thing that I want to understand is, so there's this whole notion of when you're building a product, right? There's always these two different approaches to it, right? There's one which is the misconception of how people think Steve Jobs was building products. Like somehow he would dream about the perfect iPhone and he would just launch it and then people would use it. And people would be like, oh my God, he just knows what people want, and then they use, he knows what you as a user you want, and then when they give it to you, it's like you were in my brain. And there's also another aspect, that aspect I call it the artistic approach. So an artist makes a painting out of their own creativity, and then they impose it to the world where they tell you, buy my painting. This is beautiful. It's like I didn't need to consult you to make it. While there is a scientist, right? A scientist is more like there's a case study, right? There's this specific, let's say, disease. Before I can make a remedy for it or a vaccine, I need to fully understand what this disease, where does it come from? And does it look like another disease that I've dealt with in the past? And that is a more scientific approach. I really need to collect as much data as possible to be able to build a great product. So when I think about the problem that Irebo as a product was coming to solve, there's a way to think about it in my head. I'm like, okay, why don't you just go to all the ministries? They have these certificates in paper, just digitize them, put them on a website, and then just get somebody to just go and put their ID, and then there you go. You've unlocked everything that you want. All your documents about your life are there, right? So first of all, what do you think about the scientist versus artistic approach when it comes to product development in general? What have you seen works best?
I mean, it's not like there is one that works best or worse. I think maybe the difference comes from the intention at the beginning. And let's say my intention is to solve a problem. So that's what Irembo is doing. The problem is people spend too much time running around and therefore too much money in getting a government service, right? And it comes with other inefficiencies, like government agents spend too much time writing small papers that are birth certificate instead of actually spending more time solving people's problem. So the intention here is, how do I solve that? Now, solving that is an iterative process. It could start with, let's put a phone there. So before you come to get your service, call, and we guide you exactly when you come, who you meet, what you need to bring, so that when you get here, it goes fast. That's our first way of solving it. Then you iterate on that to even remove the phone call. People do it on themselves on Irembo, right? So, and the same as what we are doing with Rwanda Equip currently, like trying to improve quality of education is an iteration. It's improving quality of education means, one, a teacher is there, the teacher is in the class, the teacher is teaching, and teaching in a motivating and engaging way the kids. Now you can start with, let me make sure the teacher is there and the kids are there, and there is some content to start from. Then I iterate and then say, okay, let's iteratively build capacity for these lessons to become more and more engaging. So like there are things that you can't just like come about and do that. So I think the like it's transforming ways of doing business is an iterative manner. Now you may say, like, there is this product like an iPhone. We might feel like it's not an iterative process, but it is in some way. Yes, when it comes out as this perfect thing that everyone was waiting for. That's great. They spend a lot of time, but they compartmentalize that time into what they would call research and development for so many years before it moved to a product that has a launch calendar. During that phase of R&D, they were iterating on solving a problem, just that it wasn't in the hands of the general public, right? So, but it's the same. There is a scientific process to that. Yes, the iPhone comes, but there was a scientific process to that. Now, the end product is this thing that needs to come, and it's a consumer product. So a consumer product doesn't have time to get into the consumer hands and then you iterate on it, because the first time they hate it, they are going to hate it forever, right? Like, but for other, like when you are iteratively transforming digital, like basically processes, here we are talking about just processes. So like, it's payments. Like when Momo came, it wasn't like instant, right? It has gone through improvements, but it started and it was like, let's start with something. Like it started probably with us sending me to use from one another, and then people transforming it into money, maybe, like not us, but in Kenya at least that's the story. But then iteratively someone said, like, we could improve this process. We could improve the process of people moving money from their bank to their Momo so that it's even faster to use. And then like all of a sudden it picks up. So all the things, yes, for some consumer product, you need more thoughtfulness and more internal research and testing and retesting and organizing focus groups. Focus groups are still users that are using something and hating it, but they are few. And they sign NDAs. They will not talk about it. Yeah. But there is always a scientific process.
I'll approach it. I think you just touched on a very good point, which is something I wanted to pick your brains on. There's this big talk going on. I know you use a lot of Twitter because we always exchange on Twitter, X actually. So there's this big thing going on, which is the era of the MVP is gone because how cheap it is to build software these days. Back in the days, let's say Y Combinator was really preaching for, you need a very, very crappy MVP, get people to test it. If you're not embarrassed by your MVP, then you've launched too late and all of that. But now it's so cheap. Back then it was very expensive to build great software, or you had to be a genius computer scientist. But now it's so easy. Anybody who has access, let's say, to $20 a month on their card, they can buy a subscription to a no-code platform. You can build an amazing looking app that solves it, and then you figure out what problem you want to solve, and you can put it in the hands of your customers. And so what's your take on that, right? Because now we can build robust.
So when those that say that the era of MVP is gone, what do they mean? Like, people will need to launch perfect product all the time, otherwise.
Yes, because there's this other thing maybe to support that. This talk that Sam Altman gave, where he said, "Oh my God, guys, I have to be honest with you. Some of the things I was saying when I was still, at Y Combinator, I don't think are true in our story, at least as OpenAI." Where he said that I kept preaching to people that you don't need a lot of money, you don't need a fancy product, you just need to launch as quickly as possible. We took so many years to launch ChatGPT, the first product of OpenAI. We raised a lot of money for us to do this. I had the best engineers in the world working on this. And so basically what I was saying is not true. In my case, I didn't follow the advice that I was giving to people. So it started raising up this, this question in the tech community where everybody who's an entrepreneur, they're like, customers are now exposed to so many great products that it doesn't matter. You can't just bring a bad product. They're going to hate it then, and they're never going to love it anymore. So what's your take on that? Do you think the era of the crappy MVP is gone, or there's still some areas where that works?
First, I've grown to dislike this type of entrepreneurs, such as Sam Altman, who, because of what they're doing that's successful, makes them have a point of view of what the future of entrepreneurship will be. So, yes, maybe entrepreneurship in the digital world, but they are doing this seated in a different kind of place, right? He may say that that era is done because he raised a lot of money because he could put, first of all, his all big amounts of money he has, but also he's who he is or was who he was, and anyone would give him money to do something, right? So that's how that world works. And then what's unfortunate is when then they appear to drive also the debate on what entrepreneurship will be. Yes, the most of the VC capital is there for someone who wakes up and say, I need to make a living, and to do that, I'm going to to open a restaurant, and this restaurant will only serve this burger and these fries because that's I know how to do. And all of a sudden, people come and then they start to add more varieties and they sell it. So same for software or an app, people will still build apps for iPhone, apps for web-based apps. We at work, we are using this one to help us manage performance conversation and performance rating of employees because we have so many employees. It's something that's really well built, but that still has some room, a huge amount of room to improve. But at least already saves us from messy Google Sheets and things like that. And that's new, probably a 2-year-old or 3-year-old solution, right? And I would say it's still an MVP, probably. And it's a better MVP than what it was before. Maybe some of the companies used it, but it's still an MVP. So this to say, yes, I don't like when we see entrepreneurship from the lens of the people who have billions that they can spend in R&D. It connects to what we were talking about the iPhone. It says we brought this and it was perfect. But it's 10 years of 90 billion of research and development every single year. Yeah. So that's what ChatGPT is. That's what Meta is putting money into. That's what Amazon is doing. And like, it always is depicted as, we just came up with this thing that's revolutionary. But there have actually, you would see that there was some launches that didn't work. But it's because these guys, I mean, they have the muscles and so. But when then in the end we see or discuss entrepreneurship from that lens, it's also not the full picture of entrepreneurship. Now, coming back to your question, is the era of the MVP done and we need to have great products right from the beginning because ChatGPT took that many years? ChatGPT is a whole different story. It requires huge infrastructure. It's not like, Irembo is a form and an SMS that goes to the person who filled in the form and maybe a connection to Momo, and then you're done. Like ChatGPT, we are talking about something that needs to learn from huge amount of data with a huge amount of calculation power for it to answer to 1 million people that are questioning it at a time instantly. So, of course, it's going to require that amount of investment and time and a big team to put all that together, because that's the nature of the thing. It's like a road. From Kigali to Kibuye, you want to do it, it's going to take a huge amount of time, but when you open it, like, people will feel like it's, all of a sudden I can get there in 1 hour and a half when it was taking me 2 hours. Yeah. But it's going to take huge amount of time because it's huge infrastructure. So ChatGPT is huge infrastructure, so it's no longer the same type of startup that we are used to. Yeah. If IBM was to do ChatGPT, it would have gone faster because it has that infrastructure already. But ChatGPT was doing it by itself and as a new startup, and that's fine. But I don't think I challenge that statement. Yeah. It's about that.
I mean, that's very good because I also question it a little bit as well. But there is another point. I think not even just Sam Altman, but the whole notion of how building, let's say, tech product has become super cheap. Where now, so what happens is that, let's say, for example, a company in India will build an amazing software and it will put it out in the market, and it will be cheaper than, let's say, a group of young Rwandan developers trying to build the same, let's say, platform. Let's say the level of education, maybe you don't have the best engineering schools. It will take many years for, let's say, a young Rwandan group of software engineers to build such an amazing product. So let's say, for example, they're all building, in my space, the HR space, right? They're trying to build you a performance management, solution. You get a Rwandan team, and then you get a team in India or another place. You're going to realize that that's going to be a lot cheaper, right? If you put these products on the market, the Rwandan team is going to put bigger markup on that price, on the price of the product than this other product. So then that means for you as a customer, what you start judging these products on is who has the best product, right? Which one can actually do the best at solving my problem? So am I okay paying a lot more here, or that actually works, right? So I think there's still that element of building software has become so cheap that if you're coming on the market and you're asking people to pay you money, and they're like, I have another alternative. I have Google Forms, which is free. You're building me another form and you're charging me $2. So it's like, unless your form is 10 times better than that one, otherwise I don't think you're going to get clients.
So that's why actually products, what I would now agree is when we talk about software product or an app, the app doesn't matter. Like, the app itself no longer matters. Like, the thinking through it as I can build an app that does that, but cheaper and it looks better, that doesn't matter. It's more about the service that you're providing and how you are packaging the whole experience for the user. And software is an enabler, nothing else. It enables to just do it better, faster, but it's an enabler. So are we doing Irembo? Yes, you could still, when we launched it, you could still go directly to a government agency and then get the services and so. But what is it that we can do so that it feels considerably better for a person to prefer Irembo? It's putting it on USSD, having a call center, informing you, like putting a number of things in addition. Like it's considerably easier for you to pay for the service. Instead of you going to the agency, they give you a number, the account number, you go pay. Like basically, it's convenience. So an app like that performance management thing, yes, it works, but it's not that we had to compare with this. Maybe it's just because they said, oh, on the fly, we can set up the questions that you ask. We can do all the work to upload KPIs for everyone. We have this whole service team that is at your service. And of course, when we are done with that, everyone will just receive a link to go and rate the performances that they need to rate, right? Like then you outsource something. The software is an enabler. So when we talk about like a software product, it's just an enabler. What software would it be an enabler? Yeah, maybe games. Yeah, maybe a game that I want to play, but also that game is more about the ecosystem it creates. Like, oh, how many other users will I meet online to play with, right? So even if it's crappy, but it has so many users you can go play with, and it offers you features to engage in socially, and you will prefer that than one that is beautiful, but whenever you go, you rarely find any person to play against, right? So it's that. It's like what do I create? How do I create an ecosystem around it? What the service level? So what we are doing in education is considerably technology-based. But it's not about the quality of the software in the tablet that teachers use. It's more about the quality maybe of the content that they will be reading or leveraging so to deliver better teaching to the students. It's the quality of us collecting huge amount of data so to inform strategies to improve each school's way of delivering. So it's the whole service ecosystem. And so then MVP is not like how the product looks like. An MVP is more of what is the minimum viable enabler that I can put in place so to still call myself a technology company, but I provide the service. Let's say you may start an online training or an online course or an app where people go and learn things online. What you want first is someone who teaches. So do I just need to get people to go there and then click on a link and they get on a video call and there is an actual person live there talking to them? Yes, that's a great MVP because they will actually interact with a person. Maybe this person will directly dive into teaching them something. And then they say, oh, okay, that works. I will come back tomorrow. So that's an MVP already. But it's the service, like it's that person. Like, yeah, so it's like there is no software that just comes by its own in its own form and is a good product just because it's easy to use. It's more of I use it, will I get what I wanted to get? I use Vuva, will I get the food that I wanted to get? Will it get to me when I still need it and I will not die of hunger when it is? So it's not about the way the app is built. It's about everything else.
What it does for the customer. There's also another debate that I'm talking to a lot of entrepreneurs about, which is this whole notion about, exactly the right thing that we're talking about right now, which is service versus infrastructure. Right? I think at any given time, depending on the nature of the business, as an entrepreneur, you have to decide: do you want to be, a service business, let's say, tech-enabled, or do you want to provide an infrastructure so that services can be done on your platform, right? And
it's still a service. In both cases.
Yes,
the first one is you directly giving a service to the clients.
Exactly.
Second one is you giving a service to someone who wants to leverage that, so to give a service to their client.
Exactly.
So you are still solving a problem for someone.
For someone, yes, absolutely. So I want to hear your take on when you look at, let's look at Africa, right? Let's not look at the West and Silicon Valley. Let's look at Africa. What kind of startups do you think are going to succeed, right, on the African markets? Looking at the problems we have, we're going to get to what you're doing right now in the education space. We're trying to solve some problems as entrepreneurs, but then we're encountering, let's say, infrastructure problems. Then we go back to the drawing board and we realize, okay, maybe you need to build great infrastructure so that new platforms can be built upon. For example, the reason why OpenAI is becoming successful is because it's creating a new wave of AI startups that can build on top of that, right? But then they've built the infrastructure, they can go. Other startups are going to come up and say, okay, we can build a chatbot, we can build a customer service AI, all of that stuff. So when you look at the African continent, which startups do you think are going to succeed? Are we, and then maybe we can talk about a sector that you may be excited about. Is it we need to first focus on the infrastructure problems that we have in different sectors, education, agriculture, and so on and so forth. And now the wave is going to build on top of that to build great software. Or you feel like there is a room for both to coexist or only one of them?
As a general principle, the startups that are going to succeed are those founded on the premise of intimately understanding the problem they want to solve. Like it's not about it's basically talking about that already. Like in my opinion, somehow counterproductive.
Yeah.
It's more of what problem do I want to solve. So it could be, recently I have a good friend of mine. It's called Tony. He has a company that started as infrastructure integration, but now they are building data centers in West Africa. This one is data centers and infrastructure. The problem we want to solve is like so many large corporate like Amazon, Google, and so need more and more data center anyway. And the more they serve clients every parts of the world, the globe, they need to put infrastructure closer to those ones so that they are able to, one, guarantee their data sovereignty, but also other aspects. Now, these guys need data centers. Let me build data centers. They will use them. And that's a problem that actually is being solved. I hope he is successful. But it's infrastructure, but it starts from what problem am I solving? And so companies or founders that intimately understand the problem that they want to solve are going to succeed. Most people remain superficial, like, oh, if I build an app that does this, this, and this, then it could solve a problem. No, you should spend considerable more time understanding the problem. Do you want to fix agriculture? It's more important for you to spend time going from a farmer who wants to sell their product to selling them. You enter that truck that took them and you see where they take them. You see how they store them. What is it that they faced as a challenge in the way? Like, you need to understand these value chains. You need to read every single thing that has been written. You need to understand the law that allow for something to happen and not to happen when it comes to this food value chain. So as long as you don't understand this, you will never build anything technology-based that fixes anything. And that's why, coming back to the MVP question, the first MVP might be to do something that's not technologically based, but because you intimately understood every single thing. Like, it's that curiosity to understand, okay, what is it that makes this thing cost so much when it gets to Kigali, yet it costed so low when it was in the farm? Maybe you will find out that there is no way to make that cost lower because so many things happen. Or you figure out that there is a way to make that thing cost lower, because you know that if you maybe put some infrastructure here and then this thing doesn't like always happen on last minute, then things will be better. Maybe by the time they get to Kigali, half of the products are dead, therefore they sell the other half twice the cost or the price. But what if you made them get to Kigali with every single thing still intact? Then maybe the price would go low. Like basically, it's that. Like we are talking about solution that we are not yet putting any technology in. But it's examples like that. But I would say most people need to be curious about the problems they want to solve, more than the technology that can solve it. The technology is, as you were saying, easy to build. Actually, might not even need to be built. It's already built. But it just needs to come and find like a problem where by fixing that small thing, it makes a huge difference that economically makes sense.
Yeah. And then let's dive into what you're doing right now, right? So looking at education, right? There's a lot of companies, there's a lot of startups, tech companies who are, let's say, building courses, right? And maybe we want to improve, we want to build more coders, we want to build more product managers on the African continent. And we're going to start by building courses. And then what happens is that they build these courses and they start trying to deploy them to people. And the first question that you get from the user is, oh, I don't have access to a 24/7 internet or a device. For me to access your platform, I need, to like wait until the school opens on Monday for me to come and access your course. Which for you as a business entrepreneur, you're losing, let's say, a little bit of time, or you're not getting as many users as you would want. And then, so again, going back to the infrastructure problem, which becomes, we're trying to build courses. Well, the people who are going to consume these courses don't even have the devices to do that on, right? So I know you're working in the education space. Tell me a little bit about what you guys are working on. And again, how you're seeing this, because I know you guys are working, when we say infrastructure, we are just talking about like, let's say Amazon web services and stuff. We're even talking about devices. We're even talking about internet. We're talking about reliable electricity in various places all over the continent. Yeah. So if these things are not in place, am I the person to come and solve them as an entrepreneur? I just know how to build courses. I just know how to train people how to be great developers on a video, but they can't access these devices. So tell me a little bit about the work you're doing right now, how you're seeing this play out. Again, going back to the same question we were about to talk about for Irembo, which is, can these things be solved by, let's say, one entity, or does it have to be a government-led initiative?
I mean, it's a big problem. However, it's an opportunity as well. So you start from this angle. I mean, you recognize that. You recognize that infrastructure is not readily available for everyone you would like to reach. One needs to be a player. Well, first, we need to believe it's ultimately going to be the case. All these devices will be available to all Rwandans at some time. It's inevitable, right? Same way it's like you have more and more people that are using WhatsApp now, and so this infrastructure is going to be available in Rwanda for everyone, right? So that's number one. Number two is an opportunity because you can already start doing this with a target audience which has the devices. So that's, again, intimately understanding the problem you want to solve. Like, I want to solve this. It still needs to get access to good quality internet and proper device. But there are people who have it. And by the people who have it using it and me creating the type of behaviors that need to happen, so for me to say my product was successful, behavior means the most people that start a course finish it, the most people that start a course finish it get some expected outcome out of it or something. You can still do that, but with just a small portion of people, but you focus at solving for that portion of the people well. But as you do this, ultimately you will get there. You will get to every single runner because ultimately everyone 18 years old will have a device and internet will be so cheap that they can consume videos for education as long as you need to. So that's one way I would want to see this thing. Of course, what we do, we try to build technology that works well within these constraints. Like people think it all gets on their tablet and it's there. they don't need to have internet for the foreseeable 1 week for them to have the content they need, then they can sync again and get the content. The device is done in a way it can remain 1 week without needing to charge. So all these constraints we know, so we built the infrastructure that needs to be built for this to happen. Another way to look at this is ecosystem. So when you are an entrepreneur and you're building, again, something like what you described, so I'm building this and I want to get people to have devices. Creating partnerships actually can make this work in a meaningful way. So an idea is like, I think is the founder of Netflix that partnered with Airtel to make sure that more people get devices that are internet enabled and where they can get all this. And the internet is going to be like 3,000 a month and gives you a lot of megabytes and all this thing. Great initiative. But for sure, there are people who would still invest that way, specifically for the people that are in your program or want to get in your program, let's say. So then you are starting to contribute to that acceleration of more people getting devices and having internet. The more, basically, also what's ultimate is the more people see value in having a device because they will get to use it to learn and acquire knowledge and therefore get to an outcome for themselves, the more they are willing to invest in it, but also the more people want to get on board, so to support them getting that because there is a clear use case for that. So it's either through partnership or through the belief that this will happen. Ultimately, most people will have this device, but let me be working on this to refine it with those that already have the device, so that the more people have the device, they will find me as being the only option for them to learn online because I will have refined it for this market. I will have created great causes that brought about outcome for those that consume them. I would have built up a technology that is engaging enough for people to go through the full course without dropping. I would have done all this. So sometimes it's also this patience. Yes, you would want it to go fast, but sometimes also it's an opportunity. Like, okay, it will not go fast, but how about we leverage the little market we have to make the product great, so that this market that's growing at 15-20% every year, also see us growing at 15-20% every year because more and more young people are getting connected and willing to connect with the type of content we provide and willing to spend that value on it.
Yes. So what's keeping you busy these days? What are you working on?
Rwanda Equipped is a big thing to work on. So that's what I'm working on. I have grown up kids now, like 8 years, boys. They are getting to that stage. They need more the kids always need attention, but it's different attention, like spending time, meaningful and interesting time with them and sharing things, playing basketball together, being involved in their love for basketball. And so that's a lot of time as well.
Yeah.
And
it's a whole new start.
Golf.
Yes.
Golf. I love this game and something I'm enjoying
but
part of.
Did you want to tell me a little bit about why Rwanda Equip was set up and what exactly you guys are working on?
Public education in Rwanda has been evolving fast and in the good direction in terms of having all kids going to school. Going to school and finding classrooms that are properly built. 600 new schools were built in the last 2-3 years. Teachers are there. There are many teachers. They were recruited, like 20,000+ teachers were recruited recently. So has been progressing fast and being invested in. But the question of quality of education still remains. There is basically of all the children that start primary school, a very small percentage finish primary school, less than 30% that's very low. And maybe about only 20% transition to secondary school. So you feel like there is a huge need to start like increasing this number, having more Rwandans who go through secondary school or the full basic education, because the basic education is up to secondary 3 and maybe only 20% get up to secondary 3. So how we do this is to build on those big investment that has already been put in place to accelerate quality of instruction. So you do that by improving the way the school is managed, making sure that we know that teachers get to school on a regular basis and on time. Second, all the lessons are taught, so ensuring the schedules are clear and being able to track that for every schedule, the lesson that was planned was opened and taught. But also designing lessons and training them on pedagogical approach to keep the classroom engaged, and being able to regularly audit that, see how it's going, improve in the way with ongoing coaching, we coach teachers to even improve on how they are doing it. Lastly is we transition to English as a medium of instruction. Not all teachers have a level, or a very minority have a level of mastering the English to the level of building day-to-day lesson in English to deliver to kids. So one of the things our content supports them to do is to actually deliver lessons in English, because it's already pre-prepared for them and in English. So we hope with this, and we've been seeing that there is a positive trend when it comes to reading English, understanding English, and doing basic mathematics. But these things take some time. We think when they compound, we will start to see then the numbers that we care about turning around, like more kids going through the grades and getting through to P6, more kids, a bigger percentage transitioning to secondary, etc.
Yeah, Interesting. You've spent 2 decades or more working in the technology space. You've also worked with a lot of entrepreneurs who are technologists or just solving problems using technology. What have you seen separate successful entrepreneurs to those who are not successful?
By the way, I don't know what we call a successful entrepreneur, but I don't know if we measure that by money or so.
No, let's say they managed to build a great solution that impacts a lot of people.
Yeah, exactly.
Right? A lot of people benefit from their solution.
And those the relentless pursuit of solving one specific problem or within one specific area. Be it even becoming a Minister of Agriculture because you are relentlessly pursuing solving the challenges that are within. To me, you are a successful entrepreneur. I think it's that, or intrapreneur, because even those. So it's that relentless pursuit of a problem to be solved, and the curiosity to understand it in its deep roots. The problem might be structural, could be economic systems, it could be behaviors, it could be cultures, it could be that. So like that curiosity to just go and understand the problem as deeply as possible, being able to mobilize people around you to be involved with you, so to solve that. Like the way people spend when they are talking about a problem, like when you talk about problems more than you talk about your solution, people feel compelled to come and join in and tell you what they've learned about that and why they think it's a problem, and they want to join and work with you on solving the problem more than wanting to work on your solution. Because when you are, my solution, then people feel like, okay, he feels he has a solution, so yeah. So it's that, like the obsession. The obsession about the problem to be solved, and the humility to understand that maybe it will not be you, but you will be a contributor.
Interesting. With AI, do you think people should still learn how to code?
No. Unfortunately. Yes, a little bit, but I don't know, maybe differently. Like, when discussing this with my wife the other day, like, there are people who you may be working with and you tell them, but why don't you go and get ChatGPT to help you on this? And they still don't succeed at getting ChatGPT to do it right? Yeah. You see what I mean?
Yeah.
So there is still a human, I would say, a need to know what to get ChatGPT to generate. Mm-hmm. You need to really to understand the things that you are asking it to do. It just does it faster than you writing, but you need to ask the right question and provide the right guidance. Look at what provides and say, oh no, this is complete bullshit. You need to provide me a better answer than this by thinking through the problem from this other angle. I think it still requires some knowledge of the context and the subject. And so, is it programming though? Maybe. Yeah, maybe learning to code, then you would understand that how to copy paste that code into something. I don't
into the actual thing.
That's the difference between a coder and a software engineer. Software engineer will be at a different level of concepts definition. So maybe, yes, we still need software engineer, but you can't become a software engineer without knowing how to write code and how code interacts with the machine it runs on and all those things, right? But maybe not, like at Andela, we defined these things.
Really, junior developers.
Yeah, junior developer, then you become maybe a developer, then you may become an architect, and then or a software engineer or associate engineer. Like basically, yeah, software engineering is still like a whole different concept. Then you start to get where you also build the things that ChatGPT need to use so to consume them. So yes, maybe, but like there are some low-level skills that will no longer be required. Like people, basically the coder that just writes the code from a design of another person, that may no longer be needed.
So no jobs for the web developers, for the website builders. Yeah, Clement, thank you so much. It's been a pleasure having you and really diving deep into your story of how you started at 14, teaching yourself how to manipulate a computer for the first time, to working for so many organizations, building great products, changing lives of different people in different capacities. You know, and I mean, there's still a lot to talk about, but
come back.
Appreciate. Please.
I feel we would have gone for another 2 hours. I didn't get a chance to start asking more questions.
Yes, part two. But really appreciate it, and thank you so much for making it.
Yeah, thank you for inviting, and this was very enjoyable.
Cheers.
Great question.